Can I ask you a little bit about things that are going on today and maybe in
Yeah.
our final time together, take the lessons you learned from the 20 years that you've lived with
Hmm.
the Emmett Till case as a filmmaker, as a civil rights activist. You said something that reminded me of the conversation that we've been having since Trayvon Martin was killed by George Zimmerman
Yeah.
in 2012 about a young person, a 17-year-old,
Hmm.
killed by a white Latino um, in cold blood, though acquitted by a jury of his peers.
Hmm.
And in the polling around the country about whether or not that was that the verdict was just, there is a huge racial divide where something like 80% of white Americans agree with the verdict, and something like 30% of black folks did.
Yes.
So, have we learned anything in this country around the issue of racial terror, around justice for black people, around narratives of white supremacy that criminalize black people in general and black boys and men more commonly? What would you have to say to a young filmmaker right now who's trying to put the pieces of Trayvon Martin's story together, or Mike Brown's, or Eric Garner's, or Tamir Rice's, or Walter Scott's, or even the story of Charleston as it's unfolding
Yes.
in this country, around the politics of the Confederate flag, or Dylan Roof's execution of 9 people? How can your experience and all that you've learned over the years with this project help us to navigate the moment we're in today?
Well, I have to tell the young people to understand the power that they possess. My story is only one story of many, of course, but I believe my story is the epitome of what one can do to cause change in their own way. I chose the means of filmmaking because I was introduced to it, but I always felt when I started doing film and when I decided to take on the Till case, I always felt that filmmaking to me was a means of activism.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you have a lot of people that speak, and that's good. But for me, using the tool and the art of filmmaking, I've always felt it was a medium of activism.
Mm-hmm.
And for this generation, in order for us to believe and to understand and to see movement or to get movement, we have to see things to believe it. And nothing hits you more than a visual. It was the visual of Till back in 1955 that inspired me and many.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I could tell you a list of people who were inspired, prominent people who were inspired by the murder of Emmett Till.
Yeah.
And but it was that image that shocked me and made me realize there was much more that needs to be done in this country in terms of race and equality. And still today, when you talk about the Trayvon Martins and the Michael Browns and so on, Emmett Till's name always metaphorically comes back into fruition.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason being is because it was the case, I would have to say, we could truly learn from. It inspired so much, not just the civil rights movement, not just Dr. King and Rosa Parks. And, Emmett's murder just didn't weigh in on those decisions. I don't know if you're going to ever talk about that, but it was, to break it down, it was Till's murder that inspired Rosa Parks to make her courageous decision not to get up from her seat on that bus in Montgomery, Alabama. Dr. King was 26 years old at the time of the Emmett Till murder case. He felt that the murder of Emmett Till was an intimidation factor to keep black people away from the polls, voting. All this was going on in 1955. 1955 was an election year.
Sure.
What we're seeing now during the election year is a lot of this violence.
Yeah.
One thing in hindsight I can honestly tell you as a filmmaker dealing with this type of work is that most of these crazy murders and this uprising that you're seeing of racism happens during election years or towards election years. So I think that's something people should look at. But getting back, filmmaking again is I believe is a great tool for activism. No more should we rely on our leadership in our communities to talk about these atrocities. Nothing hits you more than a visual. And as I said, it was the visual of Emmett Till that hit me back in 1955, and it's going to be the medium of filmmaking and visuals is going to reach people in this generation.
Well, thinking about visual.